tired. I'm so tired of this game. You know, I actually feel really bad about this. I feel bad about saying this. I feel bad about betraying the very first game that I ever played. The game that would serve as my first taste, my first gateway into the vast world that I would soon fall deeply in love with. But I have to say it. I have to be honest. Super Mario World is a fantastic, wonderful, creative, massive adventure that you should largely ignore if you haven't already played it before. For those of you who haven't already played the game, or for those a little hazy on the details, let's go over some basics. One of the 5 original launch titles for the SNES, Super Mario World features the twin brother heroes, Mario and Luigi, as they set out into a world called Dinosaur Land to rescue Princess Peach, called Princess Toadstool during this time period, who has been kidnapped again by, you guessed it, Bowser. Along the way, Mario will be able to grab 3 familiar power-ups, the Mushroom, the Fire Flower, and the Superstar, in addition to the Cape Feather, which functions similarly to the Super Leaf in Mario 3. Only having 4 power-ups compared to Mario 3's 8 may seem like a step down, but there are a couple other twists in Mario's arsenal in this game. While not exactly power-ups in the traditional sense, Mario can spin jump to bounce off hazardous enemies and break through blocks if he's big. He also gains the use of power balloons, which inflate him for a little while, allowing him to float around a short distance. Last but not even remotely least, Mario gains a new and soon-to-be very popular ally, Yoshi, a green dinosaur with a long tongue. Having Yoshi alone grants an extra hit of damage, the ability to eat fruit for coins and various other bonuses, and along with the ability to eat many of the hostile enemies in the game, he grants you access to other pseudo power-ups via holding colored Koopa shells in his mouth. Red shells shoot fire, yellow shells cause a small quake when you land from a jump, and blue shells, by far the most beneficial, allow Yoshi to grow wings and fly. I suppose rainbow shells could count as a 4th power-up, but they are just a combination of the previous 3 abilities all at once. The Yoshi fun even continues when you consider the various colored Yoshis found in the game, whose colors aren't just for show. Each colored Yoshi overwrites the color of the shell in its mouth to match its own color, meaning blue Yoshis always get wings, red Yoshis always get fireballs, and yellow Yoshis always get the quake. At the end of it all, while technically not a power per se, Yoshi even gives you a last hurrah and what I like to call the suicide jump, in which you sacrifice Yoshi to save yourself in certain circumstances that you might find yourself in from a lack of planning. Why? Don't give me that look. I know you've done it too. The world that Mario finds himself in is massive. There's Yoshi's Island, Donut Plains, Vanilla Dome, Twin Bridges, Forest of Illusion, Chocolate Island, Valley of Bowser, Star World, and Special World. Together, these areas feature, but are not limited to, 8 castles, 6 ghost houses, 4 fortresses, and 13 bonus levels that are included in a grand total of 96 exits. Now, the reason I use the word exit instead of level is that SMW is not satisfied to simply have you beat each level of the game once, but instead demands that you beat certain levels in specific ways, ending them at differing locations. For the most part, the end level marker is the same. It's a goalpost with a moving bar in the middle that leads to a bonus round when you get 100 points, but getting each goalpost counts as its own unique finish, and this is called an exit. There are occasions when an exit does not come in the form of a goalpost, but as a boss like Big Boo, or the end of a bonus level of a section, but regardless, it all counts as a unique exit. And at first, you might think it's a little hard to know which levels have multiple endings, but one trick to learn is that any level that appears on the overworld with a little red circle can be beaten at least 2 different ways. The problem comes though when a red level can be beaten 3 different ways, or when the level has no color at all, such as in the case of ghost houses. Interestingly, there is a difficult to reach exit in the Forest Fortress that does not count towards this total, possibly because it just leads to the same Reznor boss that you fight from the normal exit, and because you can't normally replay castles after you've beaten them to even get multiple exits in them unless you're on single player mode and you use the LR button code to replay them. Anyway, we've established the game is filled with a pretty big world with a lot of power-ups and bonuses for Mario to play with. Okay, but what of the levels themselves? The level design in this game is near flawless. No 2 levels are alike in nearly any way. Nothing is filler. Yes, sometimes assets or concepts reappear from one level to another, but they are always used in different ways. One underwater level is a castle filled with skeleton enemies. The other underwater level is a ghost ship filled with 6,000 ghosts! One time you're riding on a skeleton raft over lava, the next time you're desperately clinging to a moving blockchain over lava for dear life. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, you remember how I said that there are multiple exits to each level? Well, guess what? Sometimes there are multiple paths to each level that are not contingent upon getting multiple exits. They are simply paths for the sake of paths. There's no gimmicky hidden coins that you have to find, no achievement for filling up 100% of your mini-map. These paths simply exist as a true and free option for the players to explore and choose as the direction that they want to go. By giving this liberty to the players, it stops the platforming experience from becoming stale and makes playing through the game less of a chore and more an exercise in creativity. Do I take the cloud path to the sky and then dive bomb to the bottom where I know I can spin jump through the bricks into a secret? Or do I keep going up to where the bonus pipe is and skip the level halfway? You see, the developers of SMW didn't punish a player that didn't want to explore each and every inch of their world. It's clear that the world was created as a playground to simply have fun in. One interesting part of the levels are the color boxes that you can fill in if you've found and triggered the switch palace that they correspond to. Generally speaking, the blocks that get added from each switch palace only serve to make your life easier by forming bridges or safety nets that keep you safe from hazards. The yellow blocks even give you mushrooms, and the green blocks give you feathers. Sadly, the red and blue blocks give you nothing. Come on, not even a fire flower or a superstar? Speaking of the feather, the cape is the best and worst power-up in the game. It's the best by far because it allows Mario to spin kill many enemies, drift kill some enemies that you wouldn't really think were killable, float slowly so you can get your bearing, fly indefinitely in the air with decent controller skills, and pound the ground with an earth-shaking boom. So you might be thinking, how could this awesome item be bad? Well, for starters, it's so good that you basically never want the Fire Flower. I mean, the difference in strength between the Fire Flower and the cape is that losing your cape by touching a flower almost feels like touching a poisonous mushroom in Mario the Lost Levels. The biggest thing, though, is how the cape breaks a lot of the levels. A cape lets you fly over and skip most of the open levels in the game if you choose to use it as such. Don't like waiting on platforms in the sky? Fly over them. Tired of clinging on ropes? Fly over them. Too lazy to play Donut Plains 1 because it's a level you've played 567,000 times over the last 25 years? Fly over it! Okay, and that's pretty much it. Maybe you were thinking that those two factors don't really break the game, but when put together they really do on open levels. I mean, floating is fine and gives new players a chance to acclimate themselves with drops before landing. And killing unkillable enemies by cape spinning them is fine too. I mean, Yoshi can do that by eating them. But it's a simple matter of overpowering the Fire Flower and the ability to fly it that is just a bit much. I mean, of course you could do the same thing if you grab a blue Yoshi in any Koopa shell, but it's harder to get those two things together. You can't just hit a box and out comes a blue Yoshi with a shell in its mouth like you can in order to get a feather. I guess if I'm honest with myself, sometimes breaking the levels can be fun. There's something exhilarating about knowing that you're completely skipping over something that a developer spent days of his life perfecting, so you could enjoy it for 5 minutes, and you're just soaring clean over it, ignoring any and all entertainment contribution that he just humbly wanted to give you out of his noble aspirations of making a fun game for you. I think I just made myself sad a little. When you're not soaring over hours of game design, something that won't make you sad are the colorful bad guys that heavily populate each level. There are over 50 enemies in the game, and that's not counting palette swaps on the Koopas, or different variants of Charge and Chuck, or the special enemies that appear after the secret levels, because if you did add those into the count, you would have a number of nearly 70 if not more. I've played RPGs with fewer enemies than that. And what's even better is that these aren't different looking enemies with identical AI to the other enemies. They all function in their own unique way. Some climb on walls, some go to sleep and then chase you, some float around, some throw footballs at you. The enemies are as interesting as they are varied. Some of the baddies come from older games like the standard Koopa or even the Ninja from Mario 2. The Hammer Brothers even make a reappearance in this game, but this time for some reason they decided to give them wings. It's like they thought, the hardest enemy in the game from the previous series was good, but we need to give them something more besides throwing an infinite amount of hammers everywhere. We know, let's give them the power of flight. Okay, but anyway, there are a large number of unique enemies that only show up in this game at this point in Mario's history. And while a lot of them will mostly appear in this title only, some of the ones that debuted for the first time here are ones that would become staples of the Mario franchise, such as the Wiggler, Monty Mole, and even the Mecha Koopa. I know it's just wishful thinking, but I would love to see more Chargin' Chucks and Sumo Brothers and other weird enemies like that show up more often than they do in the Mario franchise. There are just some cool enemy designs here. As far as the bosses in the game go, even though they are fairly easy, they're always fun to fight, as generally they have a little twist that makes them interesting. Sometimes the walls move in, sometimes you have to use the floor as a weapon. It doesn't matter what the gimmick is, figuring it out and fighting against it is always fun. I think even after all these years, Lemmy Koopa's fight is my favorite. I just like playing whack-a-mole with him. Plus his castle is filled with Kame Koopas, which I think are an awesome enemy. But hey, maybe there are some enemies that you hate, right? Maybe you just never liked those darn piranha plants and you wanted them to turn into pumpkin monsters. Or maybe you wanted Mario to live out an inner psychotic episode where he goes crazy fighting against his inner workings and begins to hallucinate that the poor turtle people he's terrorized for 4 games straight are actually himself, and he's holding, throwing, and kicking his own decapitated head all over the place as a symbolic expression of his own inner turmoil that the pain he has caused others is washing into himself in an irreversible spiral of maddening damnation. Well, regardless of which one you wanted, you can have both! For you see, after going to Star World and unlocking the entrance to Special World and beating all the levels in the Special World, you unlock Bonus Mode? Where the entire overworld changes colors and certain enemies are replaced, like pumpkin plants instead of piranha plants, and Mario decapitated head monsters instead of Koopas. Okay, I mean, technically they're called masked Koopas. I think they're going with a Halloween theme or something, but you find a better way to describe this. It's terrifying! Alright, so let's assume that you've gone all across the world and conquered the 7 lands, and didn't use the Star World to skip straight to the end like I think we all did as children when we didn't want to figure out how to play the rest of the game. That still leaves us with the Big Bad's castle itself. That's right, the infamous Bowser's Castle. Bowser's Castle is so much fun, and it's sort of sad because each time you play through it, you only get to experience 25% of the actual castle itself. The reason for this is that there are 8 gauntlets that you have the potential to go through, but you only have to get through 2 of them. There's an underwater gauntlet, a Chargin' Chuck gauntlet, a Mecha Koopa Maze gauntlet. It's all pretty fun. Regardless of which 2 doors you pick though, you end the run in a dark, spooky hallway that leads up to the Koopa King, Bowser. Following suit with the other boss fights with Bowser's children, Bowser isn't really all that hard, but he is fun. Unlike previous games where you fought him on foot, this time he's fighting you in his dreaded clown aircraft? You know what, I don't know where the inspiration for this thing comes from, but Bowser totally rocks it, and I'm down with that. It's kind of funny looking, but I think it's still a rather likable form for Bowser to take as he fights you. He zips around, throwing Mecha Koopas at you and generally looking intimidating. It's fun. The goal is to take the Mecha Koopas though and throw them right into Bowser's head 6 times. Every 2 times he's struck, he switches attack patterns. The first pattern is fairly non-aggressive, but in the second pattern he drops large heavy spheres on you, and in the third he goes totally mad. I mean, look at this, he's just like crazy. In between each form, he flies away and shoots fire down from the sky, and if you don't have at least a mushroom on you, Princess Toadstool will pop out and give you one. Once you get the pattern down and conk Bowser for the 6th time, the fight ends and Mario is finally reunited with Toadstool. Unless you're the second player, and then you're a dirty girlfriend-stealing brother, but luckily I was only playing single player, so I didn't have to worry about that. The credits roll, the music plays, and why are there an odd number of Yoshi eggs here? The enemies come out to take a bow, and the game ends, forcing you to either restart the console or turn it off with that sad feeling in the pit of your stomach of emptiness. It's just depressing. But hey, maybe you didn't get all the exits, right? Upon reloading the game, if you've got a star next to your exit counter, you know that you've done it. Otherwise, hop back to it, lads and lasses! As far as replayability goes, this game simultaneously has a lot of it and yet none of it. As I just stated, if you haven't gotten all the game's exits, then going back and finding them is a lot of fun. But once you've gotten them all, there really isn't much else to do in the game. I mean, even though there are a lot of tricks and techniques to use in each level to solve puzzles and find secrets, your reward is almost always just coins or 1-ups. Similarly, the 5+ Yoshi coins that you find in each level just give you yet another 1-up. And this leads to something that you're going to hear me complain about a lot where it's applicable, and that's the pointlessness of lives and score. Yes, it's all fine and well if I realize I can kick a Koopa shell and bounce it off 3 walls so that I can get a 1-up. Yes, in some way the revelation of the puzzle's answer is its own reward, but I'm not very motivated when I'm receiving a reward in the form of a useless currency. Lives in this kind of game don't matter. They just don't matter. I mean, you could lose all of them 1,000 times and the game still continues. This drives me nuts. It's just, why even have lives at all? Why give them as a reward when they do next to nothing? You know, it would be weird if every time I gathered 5 Yoshi coins, the game gave me a virtual coupon for 25% off at the local laundromat, but at least I would feel like I was getting something that had some sort of value. Okay, yes, if you want to get really technical, losing your lives resets any save point that you might have gotten in the level and you'll have to restart it over again. But this is such a minor penalty that it might as well not exist at all. At least in Mario 3, if you lost all your lives, every level that you had beaten reset, making it all the more important to beat castles and unlock gates and warp pipes. But with this system, lives don't matter. The same with score. Score is only a valid indicator of actual accomplishment when there is a finite amount of it to be gained, or if there are a finite amount of lives and free lives that you get are contingent upon the score or other finite actions within the game itself. If both lives and score are infinite, then both immediately invalidate each other because there is an infinite amount of potential to receive both with no indicator of skill or ability, merely an indicator of time instead. Heck, sometimes score on its own is meaningless if there were a finite number of lives in instances like this one. I mean, look at this. Look at it! I could potentially sit here and push the select key for the rest of eternity and max out my score. This effectively makes score meaningless. And don't talk to me about the wiggler jump bug that maxes out your score in a matter of minutes. That's just depressing. But that's probably my only actual complaint about the game that I can objectively prove. My opinions aside, I'd say that's doing pretty darn good for a game, as score and lives are a small quibble compared to actual gameplay itself. So after all these praises that I've been giving the game, it's only natural to wonder, Chezni, why in Dinosaur Land did you tell everyone not to play this game? Well, I mean, it's true, right? In spite of the powerful level design, creative world, and massive amount of content, why would anyone not recommend this game? Well, here's the secret. All this great stuff has been done to death. Super Mario World was so successful and so powerful in its gate to set the pace for not just all other platforming games, but for the soul of gaming in general, that nearly every single concept in this game has been done and redone in the last 25 years since its release. Enemies have been jumped on, things have been kicked, switches have been pushed, secret exits have been found, coins and power-ups have been collected. We played this over and over and over again to the point where anytime I play a game that is traditional Mario based or even Mario-like, I just get this feeling of cold dread that I'm going to have to slug through 8 new worlds and experience yet another set of platforming hoops that I have to jump through that I've already done 70,000 times before that, and I blame this game. Yes, I know platforming has been around long before SMW. Yes, even a lot of the Mario-esque concepts that appear in this game came from its 4 predecessor games. But I truly feel that this one was the most influential. I mean, just look at all the Mario games that come after this one. The new Mario games that have been coming out for the Wii and the Wii U are called the new Super Mario Brothers. Super! The title Super didn't come because some translator thought it would be cool to slap a title on Mario. It comes from Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. Heck, sometimes people even refer to Mario as Super Mario, even nearly a quarter of a decade after the fact. And every time I try and play the newer games, I just feel like I'm dragging my feet through the same old grind. I jump on people, I don't jump on people, I kick, I dash, I hit switches, I pick up coins. And now I can't really prove this, but I feel like there's credence behind my last complaint. During the time of the SNES, the SNES was releasing games, I like to call it the age of platforming, because it really seemed like companies thought that they could just turn anything into a platforming game, regardless of how ridiculous a concept it was. As we play through the SNES history, we're going to experience a slew of really bad platformers. And like I said, I can't pull data to support this, but I really wonder if the success of SMW put into the minds of so many other companies that if they too could make a platformer, then their game too would be successful. I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, platforming was already very big on the NES, so maybe we would be doomed to play crappy platformers on the SNES regardless of SMW's success. but every time I play a subpar made, culture reference, 16-bit cliché platform 101 game for the SNES, I can't help but feel like I'm just playing a really crappy version of Mario, and it just makes me sick of Mario platforming altogether. So no, look, I guess I can't actually tell you not to play Super Mario World. You should probably play it. It's a pretty good game. I can just tell you that having played both it, the Mario games in general, and all the crappy knockoffs, you just start feeling like a world that is supposed to be open and inviting starts feeling like a dull box. It just keeps closing in on you and getting smaller and smaller. If you like the game though, please don't let that stop you from sharing your favorite parts about it. And hey, if you agree with some of my complaints or even have complaints of your own, please feel free to let me know about those too. I'd love to hear it. I mean, as I've said before, I love to play games, but I love even more to spend time with the people that play those games. So, until next time, this has been the first and hopefully not the last episode of SNES Legacy, signing out.